Can you imagine waking up at 3:17 a.m. to a blaring alarm ripping through the quiet of your home? The screech of tires and the blinding flash of blue and red lights bouncing off my bedroom walls sent my heart racing like a drum roll in a war movie. I stumbled to the window, half asleep, my pulse pounding in my ears, only to witness a scene straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. Armed officers stormed the street with chilling precision, their radios crackling with sharp commands. But hold on, that wasn't even the craziest part. The real gut punch, the moment that made my stomach drop? My Jeep, my pride and joy, the one I'd meticulously locked and parked right in front of my property per explicit instructions from the local police task force, was gone, vanished. In its place sat a ridiculous bright orange parking cone, mocking me with a sticky note that read, "Code violation, HOA confiscated." I stood there, frozen, torn between wanting to scream, cry, or just laugh at the sheer absurdity of it all. Karen, the HOA president, oh, that infamous Karen had the audacity to cut the lock off a law enforcement vehicle and tow it away like it was some abandoned junk. Did she have any clue she'd just obliterated a months-long surveillance operation? No way. And there I was, staring down federal agents outside my house, their eyes boring into me, demanding to know where the Jeep was. How do you even begin to explain to the government that your vehicle was stolen by a neighborhood association president? It was a nightmare I never saw coming. Moving into Willow Creek Estates was supposed to be my fresh start, a chance to finally breathe after years of serving overseas and drifting between cities. I was ready to plant roots, to find peace in a quiet neighborhood with a backyard for my dog to romp around in and a garage big enough to tinker with my motorcycles. Those first few weeks, pure bliss. Neighbors waved with genuine smiles, kids laughed and played in the cul-de-sac, and the air was thick with the smoky aroma of barbecues and the earthy scent of fresh mulch. It felt like home until I met the one person who'd turned my dream into a battlefield, Linda Farthington, the HOA president, known far and wide as Karen Supreme. This woman wasn't just a stickler for rules, she was the living, breathing embodiment of them. A half-inch of overgrown grass? Bam, a fine slapped on your door. Halloween lights lingering past October 30, honest. You'd get a written warning faster than you could say pumpkin. And if you dared to drive a rugged black Jeep with military-grade blackout plating and reinforced bumpers like mine, oh, you were practically declaring war on her pristine suburban vision. My Jeep, to Karen, was a crime against her perfect neighborhood. The first time she laid eyes on my Jeep, her lips pursed so tightly I thought they'd vanish into her face. "That doesn't belong in this neighborhood," she spat, glaring at it like it had personally insulted her entire family. "It looks like it escaped a demolition derby." I tried to keep things civil, explaining that the Jeep was part of my consulting work with local law enforcement. Did she care? Not a bit. She scoffed, rolling her eyes, and sneered, "Nice story, soldier boy. Next time, try a Honda like a normal person." From that moment, she was obsessed, fixated on my Jeep like it was her personal mission to erase it from existence. Every week, I'd find passive-aggressive letters stuffed in my mailbox, whining about unauthorized vehicle modifications, excessive tactical aesthetics, and get this parking intimidation. Parking intimidation? Who even comes up with that? Apparently, my parked Jeep was waging psychological warfare on the neighborhood, according to Karen's twisted logic. What Karen didn't know, because she was too busy memorizing every comma in the HOA bylaws, was that my Jeep was no ordinary vehicle. It was a covert powerhouse, outfitted with top-secret surveillance equipment. A police task force had approached me, asking to use my parked Jeep as a fixed surveillance node for a major sting operation targeting a drug ring that had wormed its way into our supposedly peaceful community. My Jeep was decked out with remote cameras, GPS trackers, and a digital recording unit. It was a full-on spy truck. Its rugged, intimidating look, that was exactly why it was perfect for the job. It blended in without raising suspicion from the suspects. Oh, the irony. Karen's burning hatred for my Jeep was the very reason the task force chose it. Of course, I kept this under wraps. Nobody in the neighborhood needed to know. The fewer who did, the better. I followed the task force's orders to the letter. Park it in front of my house. Rotate its angle slightly every few days to keep things discreet. And for heaven's sake, don't move it without notifying them first. To top it off, I slapped a heavy-duty security lock on the front wheel, both to deter thieves and to scream, "This is not some rusty junker." Did that stop Karen? Not even close. That lock, it sent her into a power-tripping frenzy. She reported my Jeep 5 times, each complaint more unhinged than the last, escalating to abandoned vehicle status, despite my repeated assurances that it was legally parked on my own property. She'd stand there, arms crossed, insisting she had the divine right to eliminate neighborhood hazards. Can you believe the nerve? One afternoon, while I was out running errands, she decided to play vigilante. Karen hired a shady private tow service, one that clearly didn't bother with pesky things like paperwork or questions. But before they even showed up, she strutted up to my Jeep, bolt cutters gleaming in her hands, and snapped that lock off like she was storming Fort Knox. My neighbor Rick, who lived 2 doors down and had a Ring camera rolling 24/7 like he was filming a reality show, caught the whole thing on video. In the footage, Karen smirks right into the camera after cutting the lock, practically gloating, and says, "One less eyesore to worry about. The gall of that woman." When I got home, my Jeep was gone poof, vanished. At first, I thought it had been stolen by some random thief, but then I spotted that orange cone and its smug little note. My blood boiled. I marched straight to Karen's door, pounding on it, but she refused to answer, hiding behind her pristine curtains. Instead, she fired off a formal email, all high and mighty, claiming the HOA had relocated the non-compliant vehicle to prevent visual pollution and uphold community standards. Visual pollution? Are you kidding me? I laughed out loud at the ridiculousness, until the reality hit me like a freight train. That Jeep wasn't just my ride, it was packed with sensitive surveillance gear. I called the police task force immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. They didn't laugh. Within 30 minutes, they were at my door, their faces grim, demanding a full rundown. When I showed them Rick's ring cam footage, Officer Melendez's face went pale as a ghost. "She caught the lock and towed the Jeep without authorization?" he asked, his voice sharp as a knife. I nodded, sweat beading on my forehead. "We're talking about tampering with federal surveillance equipment," he said. "That's obstruction of justice at minimum." My heart sank. How had this spiraled so far? The atmosphere turned from annoyed to downright explosive. The officers issued an emergency retrieval order. But here's the kicker. We had no idea where Karen had stashed my Jeep. It wasn't at any of the local tow lots, which meant she'd dragged it to some secret, off-the-books location, probably illegal. The sting operation my Jeep was monitoring completely derailed. The suspects had gotten spooked, and a months-long investigation was flushed down the drain, all because of an HOA tyrant with a vendetta against my off-road beast. Can you even fathom the chaos she caused? The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Officer Melendez that made my stomach flip. "We found the Jeep. You're going to want to see this." I braced myself, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. He pulled up in an unmarked black SUV, his face unreadable, and motioned for me to get in. We rode in tense silence, winding through back roads until we reached a rusted gate behind an HOA maintenance shed I'd never even noticed. Melendez pointed to an open padlock, dangling on the gate like a taunting symbol of Karen's recklessness. Inside was a fenced-off area, a jungle of overgrown weeds littered with cones, tarps, and 3 other cars, their parking stickers peeled off and tickets flapping on their windshields. And there, in the middle of this junkyard nightmare, was my Jeep, scratched, filthy, and slouched crookedly, like it had been tossed aside without a care. The driver's side mirror was cracked, and the small black case housing the encrypted surveillance drive. Ripped open and gutted. I felt like I'd been punched in the chest. Melendez swore under his breath, snapping photos. "This isn't a tow lot," he growled, kicking a cone. "This is a private HOA graveyard. This woman's running her own illegal impound operation out of a utility shed. Can you believe the audacity?" I circled my Jeep, my heart aching as I took in the damage, scuff marks on the wheel wells, mud caked in the suspension, and clear signs someone had tried to pry open the glove box with a screwdriver. It felt like a violation, like someone had desecrated something sacred. Melendez called for backup and a federal evidence team to secure the scene. And then, as if the universe wanted to crank up the drama, Karen herself appeared, clip-clopping through the gravel in her high heels like she was strolling into a garden party. "Oh, good you found it," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake cheer, as if this were just a friendly lost and found situation. "I was about to notify you, but I assumed you knew the HOA was within its rights, ma'am. Step away from the vehicle." Melendez cut her off, his tone ice cold. Karen blinked, her smug smile faltering. "Excuse me? I am the HOA president. I have full authority to remove unauthorized or unregistered vehicles," she snapped, puffing out her chest. "You removed federal surveillance property from an active operation." Melendez fired back, his voice like thunder. "Do you have any idea how serious that is?" Karen's face twisted into a mix of smugness and disbelief, as if she couldn't process the gravity of her actions. "You can't be serious," she scoffed. "That thing was a visual nuisance. I thought it was abandoned. It had a giant lock on it and hadn't moved in a week. Honestly, I did you all a favor." "A favor? A favor?" I stood there, jaw on the floor, unable to believe she thought she deserved a medal for this disaster. Karen had no idea the storm she'd unleashed, but it was coming for her, and it was going to hit hard. I stood there, absolutely floored. Can you believe it? Karen genuinely thought she deserved a thank you for towing a federal surveillance vehicle. The nerve of that woman. Officer Melendez, his face a mix of disbelief and fury, motioned for another officer to escort her away from the trashed Jeep. But, oh, Karen wasn't going quietly. She strutted off, loudly proclaiming to anyone who'd listen that she'd saved our neighborhood from a so-called eyesore. Every word out of her mouth was like a shovel digging her deeper into a hole she couldn't climb out of. I pulled out my phone and showed Melendez the ring cam video from my neighbor Rick Bless, that man's nosy soul. The footage was crystal clear. Karen, in broad daylight, slicing through my Jeep's lock with bolt cutters, laughing like a villain in a bad movie as an unmarked tow truck, probably some sketchy cash-only operation, hauled my Jeep away. By the end of that chaotic day, the task force had everything they needed. Undeniable video evidence, a solid eyewitness timeline, and the discovery of Karen's illegal tow yard, all masquerading as legitimate HOA enforcement. Can you even imagine the audacity of running a secret impound lot behind everyone's backs? Then came Rick, the neighborhood's unofficial historian, strolling up with a lawn chair and a cooler, looking way too cheerful for a crime scene. "So," he said, popping open a soda with a grin that screamed mischief, "you gonna tell Karen she just messed with the feds, or should I blast this on Facebook first?" Oh, Rick. That man had been archiving every single one of Karen's antics like he was curating a museum exhibit. He had a treasure trove of her passive-aggressive letters, her unhinged rants at HOA meetings, and her smug posts on the community Facebook group where she bragged about cleaning up the streets. Screenshots, ring cam clips, he had it all, and he offered them up like he was donating priceless artifacts. "I always knew she'd implode," he said, his grin widening, "but stealing a government Jeep? That's next level." I couldn't help but laugh, but deep down, I was still reeling from the chaos Karen had unleashed. Here's the kicker. The HOA had no clue any of this was happening. Karen had gone full rogue, acting alone without a single board vote, no paperwork, not even a formal notice. It was pure spite, fueled by her obsessive need to control every blade of grass in Willow Creek Estates. When word of her stunt spread, the neighborhood erupted in a mix of shock and celebration. Some residents were dumbfounded. How could she be so reckless? Others were practically throwing a party. One woman, bless her heart, showed up with a tray of cupcakes frosted in blue and red, shaped like tiny tow trucks. Can you picture it? That evening, Detective Sasha Lynn, the no-nonsense leader of the task force, called me, her voice sharp as a blade. "We're evaluating charges," she said, and I could feel the weight of her words through the phone. Tampering with federal property, interfering with a surveillance operation, possibly obstruction of justice. Her HOA title doesn't shield her from any of that. My stomach twisted. Karen was in deep, and she had no idea how much deeper it was about to get. Sasha warned me to brace for fallout. People like Karen don't just slink away quietly. Sure enough, the very next day, Karen had the gall to call an emergency HOA meeting, not to apologize or take responsibility, but to double down and justify her actions. She claimed it was all a big misunderstanding about community safety and get this federal overreach. Federal overreach? Are you kidding me? The audacity was unreal. She was spinning herself as the victim, completely oblivious to the mountain of evidence stacking up against her. I couldn't wait to see her face when the truth came crashing down. The meeting was a circus packed to the brim with furious residents, curious reporters, legal observers, and a few serious-looking folks in dark suits who clearly weren't there for the drama. Karen strutted in late, wearing a bright red blazer like she was hosting a game show, clutching her clipboard like it was her lifeline. She tapped the microphone twice, all smug and syrupy, and began, "Thank you all for coming on such short notice. I want to address the recent incident involving the removal of an illegally parked, unregistered vehicle. There's been confusion, misinformation, and frankly, hysteria. Hysteria? Oh, please." Someone snorted, probably Rick. That rascal. And Karen barreled on, claiming she'd followed proper procedure, had no idea the Jeep was government property, and believed she'd been misled. Misled? By who? Her own ego? I couldn't take it anymore. I shot to my feet, my voice booming. "Misled? You cut the lock off a federal vehicle, towed it without authorization, and bragged about it on Facebook." The room buzzed with murmurs, and Karen's glare could have burned a hole through me, but I wasn't backing down. I marched to the front, handed a USB drive to the community center's IT guy who was practically vibrating with excitement, and the screen flickered to life. First up, the ring cam footage, showing Karen slicing through the lock, waving at the tow truck, and laughing like she'd just won the lottery. Then came the Facebook screenshots. One by one, her posts crowing about taking action, mocking my Jeep as military cosplay, and declaring, "Sometimes you have to break the rules to keep the streets clean." The room went dead silent, the weight of her words sinking in like a lead balloon. A board member, Greg, whispered nervously to another, his face pale. Karen, her voice strained, tried to recover. "Perhaps I was misinformed about the vehicle's ownership," she stammered, "but it violated HOA standards, and the bylaws give me authority." "Oh, really?" Detective Sasha Lynn wasn't having it. She stepped forward, cool as ice, holding a thick folder. "No, they don't," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "We've reviewed the HOA charter and procedures. You bypassed the board, failed to notify any enforcement agency, used an unlicensed tow company, and relocated the vehicle to an unauthorized site. You've been operating without community consent." The crowd gasped, but Sasha wasn't done. "The property was part of a sanctioned joint task force operation. Your actions compromised months of surveillance, damaged sensitive equipment, and forced us to terminate an active case. Can you imagine the shock on everyone's faces? Karen turned to the board for backup, but they were leaning away like she was radioactive. Greg, looking like he'd aged a decade, stood up. I'd like to make a motion to suspend Linda Farthington as HOA president pending an internal investigation, he said, his voice shaky but firm. Another member seconded, and a unanimous aye echoed through the room like a thunderclap. Karen's mouth fell open, her eyes wide with disbelief. You can't do this, she shrieked, her composure crumbling. This is a power grab! I built this HOA! You destroyed it in one afternoon! I shot back, standing beside Sasha, my heart pounding with righteous fury. Karen frantically flipped through her clipboard, then, in a move so bold it stunned everyone, waved a letter in the air. This is a cease and desist order from my attorney against the police and Mr. Jacobs for entrapment, defamation, and emotional distress, she declared, as if that piece of paper could save her. Sasha glanced at it, unimpressed. Trent Maxwell? He's already under investigation for misconduct. Good luck, she said, handing it back with a smirk. The room practically vibrated with tension. Karen realized she was alone. Her loyal supporters, the ones who'd backed her every petty crusade, were silent. Rick leaned over, whispering with a chuckle, "Ding dong, the witch is cooked." Karen stormed out, barking over her shoulder, "You haven't heard the last of this!" But the room erupted in applause, a spontaneous, cathartic ovation for the downfall of a suburban tyrant. It felt like we'd all been holding our breath for years, and finally we could exhale. Sasha pulled me aside afterward, her voice low but firm. "We'll forward the file to the DA. There will be charges," she said, and I nodded, still processing the whirlwind. Greg approached later, his head bowed, and apologized, admitting the board had been too scared of Karen's threats to stand up to her. That night, I slept like a rock. No sirens, no flashing lights, no angry emails about my Jeep's aesthetics. For the first time in months, I felt peace. Within 48 hours, Rick O., that glorious troublemaker, uploaded the ring footage to Reddit's R-entitled people with the caption, "HOA Karen cuts lock to impound neighbor's Jeep, didn't know it was federal." It exploded, hitting the front page and racking up millions of views. Karen's face was plastered across TikTok, YouTube, even Twitter, everywhere. News vans rolled into our quiet neighborhood like we were ground zero for the scandal of the century, and people from other towns drove in just to snap selfies with my Jeep, now returned to me, scratches and all. Someone even launched a parody GoFundMe called Save the Tactical Jeep, and the donations poured in, enough to fund a sleek new matte black paint job. My Jeep went from neighborhood nuisance to a full-blown celebrity. How's that for a plot twist? But beneath the memes and laughter, the situation was deadly serious. The surveillance gear inside the Jeep was destroyed, setting back months of critical police work. Karen, despite her suspension, had the nerve to hold a press conference with her sleazy attorney, Trent Maxwell, claiming she was the victim. She argued the police failed to label the Jeep as official property, that I baited her into towing it, and that HOA bylaws gave her immunity. Immunity for tampering with federal equipment? The district attorney wasn't buying it, filing charges for unauthorized towing, destruction of property, obstruction of an investigation, and tampering with surveillance equipment. The feds sent a scathing letter to the HOA, demanding full cooperation, and the board, still reeling, issued a public apology and began dismantling Karen's beloved violation committee. The neighborhood literally cheered in the streets. Can you picture the joy? Karen, never one to go down without a fight, filed a countersuit against the HOA, the city, the police, and even me, claiming I'd enticed her into committing a crime by, wait for it, legally parking a government vehicle on my own property. The judge took one look at her case and tossed it out so fast, the courthouse clerk was smirking. Meanwhile, the internet went wild. Memes of Karen exploded. One photoshopped her into a Grand Theft Auto loading screen, bolt cutters in hand, with the caption "Mission failed. Federal charges incoming." Another turned her press conference into a rap remix, auto-tuning her whining into "I didn't know it was federal." She became the poster child for entitlement, her name a byword for overreaching HOA tyrants everywhere. The neighborhood began to heal, like a weight had been lifted. People started talking again, laughing on their porches, relaxing without fear of Karen's fines. Rick, ever the entrepreneur, launched HOA.net, a website compiling resources for HOA victims, complete with a detailed timeline of the Jeep incident, and get this, Team Jeep mugs and T-shirts. The task force replaced the Jeep's damaged gear and, to my shock, gifted me an upgraded model with reinforced panels and blackout tech. I couldn't believe it. But the real bombshell came when an audit of Karen's HOA expense reports revealed years of unapproved spending, towing fees, private contractors, even her personal printer ink. Thousands of dollars misused, all buried in shady line items. The authorities opened an embezzlement investigation, and Karen's house of cards was crumbling fast. A week later, the marshals arrived. Can you imagine the scene? 3 black SUVs, a sedan, and uniformed officers knocking on Karen's door with quiet authority. She didn't answer, probably knowing what was coming, but the locksmith made quick work of it. When Karen finally appeared, her hair messy, her red blazer wrinkled, she clutched a manila folder like it could save her, cuffed, and led to the vehicle. Her face wasn't rage, it was pure disbelief, as if she still thought this was all a mistake. The neighborhood erupted in cheers, and Rick, that lovable chaos agent, set off leftover 4th of July fireworks. The charge sheet was a doozy: obstruction, tampering, unauthorized towing, misuse of funds, and suspected embezzlement. The HOA collapsed, its bylaws shredded, and residents celebrated by painting mailboxes bright colors and planting wildflowers without fear of fines. They even gifted me a custom metal sign that read "Reserved for Tactical Eyesore." I bolted it to the curb, and it became a local landmark. In a poetic twist, the task force bought Karen's illegal impound lot and handed me the deed. I turned it into the garage, a community hub with workbenches and donated tools, open to everyone, no permits, no fines. To celebrate, we held a Jeep parade, my upgraded vehicle leading the way with community watchdogs stenciled on the hood. Kids waved flags, parents cheered, and Rick live-streamed it to viral fame. Sasha presented me with a plaque, "For keeping your cool when your HOA went full villain." I laughed, but the weight of it hit me. This could have gone so wrong. But it didn't. Karen took a plea deal, no jail, but restitution, heavy fines, and a 20-year ban from any HOA board. She sold her house and vanished in the dead of night. No one cared. Our neighborhood, now jokingly called Eyesore Estates, flourished with barbecues, tree plantings, and freedom. My Jeep, parked front and center, became a symbol of resilience. Karen thought she was protecting the neighborhood, but she was the real threat. Now, every time I fire up that engine and hear it roar, I smile. It's not just a vehicle, it's a damn good story, one I'll tell for years. Who knew one bad decision, like cutting a lock, could unravel a toxic system?